Hello, I'm Dr. Jeanette Raymond, psychologist, psychotherapist, relationship expert, and author of Now You Want Me, Now You Don't. Today I'm going to talk to you about the misunderstandings, tension, and distrust that comes when women talk about their marriages to their friends. You know, it's a kind of accepted belief that women yak more than men, and particularly about personal things, but they don't know and they don't imagine the harm it can do to their relationships with their husbands, boyfriends, or partners. So I'm going to tell you the story today of Ephraim and Taylor, who were married for 15 years. And they were having a lot of trouble communicating. They were kind of withdrawn, and they talked at each other instead of to each other or with each other. And things were very tense and uncomfortable. And Taylor didn't feel loved in her marriage. She didn't feel like, there was a closeness that she wanted with Ephraim. And she wanted to kind of shake everything up and talk about it, but that wasn't her way. She'd never been able to express her feelings to her husband. And similarly with Ephraim, he had never been able to express his feelings to her. They'd met when they were pretty young and got married early, had a child, and then another one. And so that kept them busy, working and living with the family, doing their social obligations and family obligations. But they never really learned how to talk about what was going on inside them for each other. So they didn't have an emotional, intimate experience that could make them feel warm and nurtured and encourage them to keep doing it and strengthening their bonds. So one by one, the initial connections were kind of fraying because they were growing up, they were changing, they'd become different people, they were now taking care of kids. And so it came to a crisis point when they arrived in my therapy office. But before I tell you what we did and what I found, the issue at stake was that Taylor was close to her sister, and she would talk to her sister all day by texting and calling, and even in the evenings and so on, about her concerns regarding her marriage. She would talk about Ephraim and what he was not doing, the things that concerned her and upset her. And her sister would take her side, obviously, and champion her, and then communicate to Ephraim what a bad person he was, how he wasn't being a good husband, he wasn't being supportive, he wasn't being a good partner, he didn't know how to be a good person in her sister's life. So she became the kind of proxy. And if you think of a triangle, she was at the top of the triangle, and here's Ephraim on this side, and here's Taylor on this side, and they were not communicating. So there was like no bridge of communication. Taylor was communicating with her sister, and her sister communicated with Ephraim, but in a negative way. So all that did was create more tension, more hurt and bitterness and distancing between Ephraim and Taylor. So when they finally came to see me, they could barely look at each other. Nobody knew where to start. Tensions were high. And basically, they had to learn to trust each other, because what I discovered was that Taylor was terrified of telling Ephraim her real concerns about his role in the marriage and his struggle being close with her emotionally and her struggle with him. So she felt let down, she felt alone, she felt burdened with everything, and that he was just fine doing his own thing and just taking the marriage for granted, basically. But she was too scared, and she was too scared for a very good reason. She thought that if she expressed her feelings of discomfort and dissatisfaction, that he would just walk out because he was a very independent, self-sufficient guy. He kind of brought himself up. So she was scared that he might not need her. He might say, well, if that's how you feel, why should I bother, and just leave and only have contact with his son and daughter, which is how she felt things were anyway. So she sort of made little hints here and there, and he'd get to the point. His sister-in-law was telling him what a bad guy he was, and now he was getting these little hints of dissatisfaction from his wife. So he was being squeezed at either end, and he would start blowing up. And then Taylor would say, oh my God, he's not stable, he needs help, and all this sort of thing. So he became the problem. But really, both of them had difficulty expressing to each other. He kept his stuff in, she was telling her sister, and her sister became the mouthpiece. So this triangulation that I just described is a very serious sign of a relationship being not only dysfunctional, but actually unhealthy and toxic, which is a lot worse. So here's what I noticed when they came in the waiting room. When I encouraged Taylor to talk to Ephraim about how she felt, she said she was angry and upset that he wasn't doing all those things that she felt he should be doing, showing her love in a particular way, making her feel wanted, making her feel special, taking her out, wooing her, enjoying their physical intimacy life, having affection. Those are all the things that she said was missing, and he was basically doing his own thing. He wasn't with other women, but he was, kind of doing his own thing, or doing things with the kids, but not with her. And what he said was that she never appreciated anything, so why should he bother? So we have this impasse. So I want you to imagine for a moment Ephraim and Taylor. They don't even look at each other in my office. They look at me and they talk to me, but they don't talk to each other. That's a good sign, again, that they have fears about being honest and open with each other, because they want the relationship to be okay. They don't want to rock the boat. So they're afraid that if they say what they really think and if they show how upset they are, the other person will either be demolished and they won't have a partner anymore because they won't be able to handle it. They're not tough enough, or they'll walk out. But either way, they'll be alone and abandoned. So once I began to work with them on feeling safe and about being open and describing a feeling, not just I'm upset or I'm irritated or that felt good, because neither of them knew what that meant. So as I encouraged them and helped them to find words that were more descriptive and that were more believable, little tiny windows began to open. And I was able to show them that when Taylor finally realized that her talking to her sister about her marriage did all the damage, that the relationship between her sister and her husband was so bad that she had kind of been instrumental in creating that tension and conflict, and now she was reaping the terrible consequences because her husband, was not talking to her anymore, and felt that his issue was with her sister. Actually, it was with his wife, but he didn't know that yet. So when she owned it, when she said, I'm the responsible party, I feel guilty, I feel bad, I feel upset that I didn't see what I was doing, I noticed that Ephraim looked straight ahead. He didn't even register that she said that, and he'd been telling me for weeks that this is what he wanted. He wanted her to appreciate that this was her doing, and that she should talk to him about the marriage, not her sister. But he didn't even register when she did all that, when she actually stepped up to the plate, owned it, said she felt guilty and bad, and so on. So when I pointed it out, what we discovered was that he couldn't allow himself to believe it or trust her, because if he did, then he might be putting himself in a position where she could take advantage or, treat him badly again, and then he'd be, even an even worse position than before. So what he did was detach himself. He heard it, he registered it intellectually, but he detached the feelings, didn't hear her feelings. He just heard that she's owning it, okay. And he went and said about, oh, well, okay, that's fine. And then he started talking about his stuff. And I noticed that when he talked about his sense of betrayal, that she spoke to her sister and not him, and how badly he felt maligned and misrepresented by his sister, that made him just want to cringe and not hide and not talk to anybody. She did the same thing. She heard him, she registered it in her head, she detached herself from the feelings and his feelings, put it away in a lockbox, and started talking about something else. So both of them became very adept at ignoring their own feelings and their partner's feelings. So both of them feel empty, both of them feel unheard, both of them feel unseen, and they escalate and more and more and more because they feel like their partner's not getting it. And of course they're not, because they're detaching it. They have these huge pairs of scissors that as soon as the feelings come inside one of them, they snip, and when they come from their partner, snip. So they can't get in touch with them, and that's where the energy is, that's where the feelings are, that's where the fuel is for connections and emotional intimacy and closeness. And once I pointed that out to them, they were just amazed, and they got it. And then they could see when a little window was opening and how quickly they closed it. And then another window would open and boom, it was closed again. And then I was able to show them that when they had a feeling, before it became too big and before they could find even any words about it, it was so threatening to them to feel anything, to be vulnerable in that moment, that they immediately went to their heads and started talking intellectually and rationalizing and being understanding. But it didn't make either of them feel loved, wanted, appreciated, cared for, important, or special, which is what they both wanted. So I showed that by a woman talking to someone else about her marriage, how this harm could be done. It might work for the woman. She might feel comforted by a family member. She might feel connected. She might feel safe. She might feel that there's room for her feelings. She might even feel cared for and important in that relationship, even though she's not feeling it in her marriage. But telling her sister, not telling her husband, was the most dangerous way of trying to stir up a marriage that was basically kind of, humming along in a deadbeat way. After they came to therapy and I showed them how they were detaching and they opened the window and they closed and they started to feel safer and talk more about their feelings, they both came alive as people. They felt that each one was actually feeling their pain, that they were feeling sorrow or guilty or fearful, and then they could express and share. And that marriage took off. And after 15 years, we made it come alive again. It had been dead for so long. But the most important thing was the woman, Taylor, had to stop telling her sister about the marriage. And every time she had a feeling about the marriage or about Ephraim, she had to tell him directly, and he had to do the same thing, not just go off on his own and do his own thing or just be a dad and ignore her. So both of them had to learn that feelings are important. They're the glue. They are the fuel. They're the building blocks of emotional connection, intimacy, and the bonds of a relationship. And it worked so well. I'd love to hear what you think, what your experiences are of when one partner, particularly a woman, tells another family member all about the marriage, and the husband, the male partner, feels betrayed. So please let me know, ask any questions, and You can check out my website, losangeleswestsidetherapy.com. There's so much more information. You can take intimacy quizzes. And also don't forget my book, Now You Want Me, Now You Don't, at that same website. Look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, this is Dr. Jeanette Raymond saying bye for now.